Hi, I'm ThaMango, and over the past 4 months, I've been working to transform Boatem Town, giving it the ultimate makeover. I've been finishing areas that couldn't be finished due to the HermitCraft season ending early, and adding loads of new areas to explore. Today is the final episode. We've transformed Green's Midnight Alley, we've brought to life Scar's plans for a huge sky base, we turned Pel's base absolutely huge, as well as Mumbo's, and we've expanded on the central Boatem area. This episode, we'll be working on transforming Impulse's candy factory with a bunch of interior and expansions. As well as this, we'll be touching up some other Boatem areas and adding a few extra details to some of the bases that we've already transformed. I'll be finishing the video with cinematic shots of the entire project, and I'll be telling you how to get the free world download and a cool Boatem wallpaper, so make sure to stick around until the end. Anyway, let's begin. I don't want this to be a ridiculously long video, and so we're going to get through Impulse's starter builds relatively quickly. That way we can get to the mega base right away. Just like with all of the other Hermit starter homes, I made some slight edits to the design of Impulse's, but nothing major. I switched a few blocks and simplified some of the patterns on the outer walls, just to fit it in with the style that I've been using everywhere else. I added in a small path to connect it to the main pathway and covered the area in farms. Moving on to the interior, I wanted to make it feel slightly more open, and so I moved the chests to the outer walls. Upstairs, I also made some slight edits to open it up as well. I also added some yellow beds, seeing as they fit Impulse's colour scheme. I like how it all came together, but as I mentioned, it's only a slight transformation. Next up, I walked over to Eye Candy. This is the store where Impulse sells his candy from, which has been created in the big factory. A few months ago, I moved the location of this factory to make room for a large dock that I created in Pel's starter base zone. Now it's located near Green's base, and right in the middle of the wheat farms that we added. I wanted to make it look a bit more cozy and like a small store that you'd find in a quiet town. I just went around the entire build and added some small details like window frames and supports around the edges of the roof. From here, I changed the copper on the roof to a more vibrant type, which helps to make the store stand out more, without it being too overbearing. With the exterior finished, I created a staircase up to the door and then moved on to the interior. To make it look more like a vintage candy store, I added this checkered design onto the floor, which helps to add a lot more character. And I then added some shelves of products to be stacked on. To add some more height to the inside, I added some support beams which go along the top of the building, which help to hold up the ceiling. Finally, I went outside the store and added 2 small bench areas which people can sit down on and enjoy any food that they've purchased. This area of Boatem has turned into such a relaxing spot to hang out. And now that the smaller builds have been completed, I went over to the mega base and got prepared to make some really cool builds. Now, if you're not aware, in Season 8, Impulse built a pretty exact replica of Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, and so I wasn't really sure what I could do to transform it without ruining it. In my opinion, this is already an absolutely perfect build. The first thing I found which I could do without ruining it is to blend it in more with the rest of Boatem. To do this, I started with the landscape. I extended the grass out all around the factory, and added in some rocky edges along the coast. I also built up 2 small mountains to add some slight height variance in the terrain. One of these is connected directly to Mumbo's base. I then started to paint all of the terrain, adding in some big rocks which are filled with various coloured candy, which the factory harvests and uses to make some of their products. In reality, these are obviously just ores though. I then finished the terrain with some huge mushrooms which would also be harvested to make candy, and a bunch of colourful flower varieties, including my favourite, alliums. I use these in every single build that I make. Moving on from here, I made a couple of tweaks to Impulse's wall design, and then finished building the walls all around the outside of the factory. Impulse had already marked out where the walls would go, and so I just followed his guide so that I didn't ruin his original vision. Once all of the walls were pasted in, I then spent a very long time connecting all of the gaps where the curved corners are positioned. This took so long. Connecting to the centre of the walls is the main entrance. I once again didn't change too much, but I did decide to give it some slight height, with a staircase leading up to it. The staircase is obviously very wide, seeing as lots of people would want to enter to try the best candy they'll ever taste. On the other side of the entrance archway, I added the word "bye" in some large white text, as a nice message to anyone who is leaving the factory after a busy day of working or most likely eating. And now, moving to the inside of the walls, I decided to add a pattern to the grass using a mix of grass blocks and moss blocks. This helps to make the ground look like it was recently mowed. I also then added in a new fountain, which is a little bit bigger than the original, to make the entrance much more grand. With the main plaza sorted, I then moved on to the truck parking areas. These are symmetrical and located on either side of the entrance. I just added some slight details to the outside, with lots of iron bars and trapdoors to make them look slightly more industrial. On the inside, I added loads of crates and barrels in the empty locations, where trucks aren't parked. Lots of these are positioned on small shelves that I added into the walls, with ladders for the workers to get up to. The workers, of course, being Oompa Loompas, who I'll show you when we get to the interior of the main factory. I also added a couple of hanging chains just to make the area have a bit more ambience. And with that finished, I can move on to the thing I'd been dreading, transforming the factory itself. For the existing building, I just went around and added some small details to all of the walls, to break up the design a bit and to help blend it in with the rest of Boatem. I've been adding small details to all of the mega bases, and so adding these in here should help make the build look a lot more consistent. This footage doesn't show the fact that adding these details alone took me about a full day. Coming up with small things to add was very difficult, but I think it worked out. For the big chimney at the back of the base, I just added some gilded black stone to highlight the gold trim, and with that I was finished with the current build. One thing I did notice quite quickly though, is that there's a lot of empty room between the outer walls and the factory. I tried to find images of the back of Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, and I only managed to find one. However, it looked like the remaining part of the building would take up the exact amount of space left, and so I'm guessing Impulse intended to build the rest. As he didn't have time to, I'm going to try it now. This isn't an exact replica, as the image I found didn't show too much. However, I've copied the general shape of what I could find online and added my own twist in some areas. To start with, I just built up some huge bricks with general shapes, which I could then detail after. I didn't really try to build anything too specific with the exterior. I just wanted to make some shapes which I thought would fit in with what had already been built, like this room which had a really cool triangular glass roof. This tall white building at the back of the factory will actually have a purpose though, as it will be the main storage room, connected to some docks at the back of the area. These docks are going to be pretty huge. They'll be the main way that candy is shipped around the HermitCraft server, seeing as Boatem is all built on an island. Once I had the main foundation down for the docks, I began building a large storage room in the side of the factory. There are 4 lanes that cargo can be sorted by, with 1 to 2 being for imports and 3 to 4 being for exports. For the interior, I just kept it very open, so loads of crates and cargo could be fit inside. It really feels like a big open warehouse. Going back to the outside of the docks, I created a small wooden dock which extends outwards, which is exclusively there for Scar. Here he can pick up supplies from the factory on his water swagons to trade with other hermits. Right at the end of the docks, I created some large cargo cranes which can be used to lift cargo containers off and on ships, seeing as they'd be too heavy to lift by hand. I made sure to build these with blackstone so they'd fit in well with the area. With the cranes both placed in, I then added a huge variety of cargo crates all around the area, all in a bunch of different colours. I also added a small staircase connecting the upper and lower docks, and a bunch of barrels. From here, I had an attempt at building a cargo ship. I was very tempted to just not build one, as I suck at building vehicles, but I felt even a bad cargo ship would look better than no cargo ships. I then pasted the design in all around the area in the ocean, and built a bunch more cargo containers on top of each of the ships. I must have said cargo at least 20 times in the past minute. With the dock and ships all sorted, I then moved on to creating a couple of trees which I could paste around the area. I made 2 similar varieties. One is the classic design that I've been using all around Central Boatem, and the other is a slightly more vibrant design, which I will only be adding inside of the factory walls. I then pasted the trees down in random rotations to make them all look unique, and added some flowers inside of the Boatem walls just to decorate the grass a bit more. I know the original factory wouldn't have had trees inside the grounds, however I felt it helped to blend the area into Boatem more, and so I went with it. While I was working on terrain, I also decided to quickly add a cave into one of the mountains that we created, where workers would be mining the candy ores to harvest into a candy bar. This just helps to tie into the storyline. It really wasn't needed, but it's something to explore. Finally, for the exterior of the factory, I made a couple of edits to the hot air balloons that Impulse had made for his shop called Eyesore, and I then added a couple of them around the top of the factory, as they're there to celebrate the grand reopening. As well as this, I quickly added some fake smoke going out the top of the biggest chimney, seeing as default Minecraft smoke would have looked too small. And with that, the exterior was fully finished. I'm really happy with how it's come together. I think the interior will be a lot more fun to make though, so let's get straight into building that before I finish the other stuff in Boatem. Currently, Impulse has already built 1 or 2 rooms in the factory, excluding this entrance room. My favourite room by far though is this really cool garden area, which looks like it's taken straight out of the film with the purple boat and candy hills. I didn't want to adjust much, but I did decide to add some industrial lighting along the roof of the room, just to brighten everything up and make it look like it's in a factory. Before this, it was just plain andesite. I also then went and added a bunch of colourful flowers on top of some of the grass, just to brighten it up. This would of course be edible. On top of this, I added some lilacs hanging down from the candy tree and added some very minor detailing onto the walls of the building, on either side. This was all nothing major, but I think the little touches go a long way. Exiting the room, I then moved to the creation room. This is where the iDimpy bars are made, using this machine that Impulse created. For this room, I kept it all very open, and I went with a very simplistic white colour scheme, like you'd see in the films. I added some very tall support beams around the room, and then 2 conveyor belts along the centre with loads of machines on either side of them. This way the bars can be created in bulk. With the machines ready to go, I spawned in a bunch of Oompa Loompas who are definitely not baby villagers. I then added in a hallway which connects to both the garden room and the storage area. As before, I kept it very simplistic. Impulse had pretty much already finished this room, and I didn't want to mess with it much. I just fixed a chunk that had glitched out and then flipped the entire room on top of itself, with a layer of ice in between. This was just like I did with Gringotts Bank. The difference here though is that the mirror is on the ceiling above you, which makes a really cool effect, which I could imagine seeing in Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. Exiting this branch of the factory, I made some slight edits to the entrance room, and really darkened the light so that each of the hallways leading off it would stand out more. Mobs would definitely spawn in here now, but we don't need to worry about that. Currently, if you turn right from this main room, you'll find absolutely nothing, as the room unfortunately never got built. But that does mean I have a chance to build whatever I want over here. I decided to build a nut testing room, inspired directly by the film. This is the room that's filled with loads of squirrels who test if a nut is good or bad quality, and if it's bad, it gets thrown into the lava in the center of the room. I kept the design really simplistic, but I love how it came together. Unfortunately, Minecraft doesn't have squirrels, even though they'd be really cool in the game. To make up for this though, I instead sat a bunch of cats down on the chairs to test the nuts. I don't know how well they'd be able to, but they look really cute at least. From here, I then added in a very simplistic pathway to connect the nut testing room to the main entrance. Now, I don't want to bore you by showing you the building process for all of these rooms, as it's a bit repetitive. I will show you though a couple of the rooms that I ended up building. I created this large storage room upstairs which has loads of empty space. Following the pathway from it will lead you to the mixing room. This is where chocolate is all mixed together to get the perfect cocoa blend, being stored in the tanks on the side. I won't show you all of the rooms as I don't want to spoil everything if you're planning to explore the world yourself, but I will also show you this meeting room, which is located right at the top of the building, with amazing views of Boatem outside of the window. But with that, the factory is all done. Now we can just move on to making a few minor edits in Boatem, and then we'll be finished with the entire project, which feels really odd to say. Back outside the factory, the first thing I wanted to do was make the giant Boatem pole from last episode a bit smaller. A lot of people mentioned in the comments that it was too big, and I completely agree. My friend Cloris resized this for me and it looks absolutely amazing. It still looks pretty huge from the ground, which is cool. Now, going down into the Boatem hole, I worked on building a new meeting room, seeing as the last one got destroyed when the hole was expanded. I kept the same layout and style of the original room, keeping it very square and very white. And of course, I made sure to add back this monstrosity of a statue into the room. Around the room, I created a unique chair for each member of Boatem. Pel's chair was designed to look like an old boat which had been repurposed. Impulse's chair looked very grand and incorporated his colour scheme. Scar's chair was designed to look like it was made out of repurposed gears and wooden planks. Mumbo's chair is made out of potato. And Green's chair looks very magical, with floating candles all around it. A lot of people also mentioned in the comments to add some goats and llamas under the Boatem pole for people to sit on, and so I did exactly that. I still don't know why anyone would choose to sit down here though. Next up, I added back in the Pillbug statue. I originally planned to build a really cool cave for this to be located in under Boatem, with some cool lighting and decorations. However, when I started building it, it felt wrong having the statue being so hidden out of sight, and so I instead just chose to move it into an open spot I found near Green's base, which is very easy to spot and very visible from pretty much anywhere, which it wouldn't have been in its original location. Don't worry, I made sure not to adjust the build as it's perfect how it is. And now, going right back to the start of the series, I wanted to revisit Green's mega base and add just 2 extra things. First, I wanted to make another shop interior in his Midnight Alley, just because it's been so long since I made the others. This shop would sell goods from the Nether and looks pretty standard inside. The interior is nothing special. However, I then added this portal inside of the shop, and on the other side of it is a long walkway which takes you through the Nether, and to some very magical armor which is for sale. Outside of the base near the train tracks, I then added Ron's car from Harry Potter, which was once again designed by my friend Cloris. Chai299 kept commenting asking for me to add this, so I hope you like it. Cloris also designed for me a bunch of llama statues which I could add all around Pel's base. These all look absolutely adorable and help to really show Pel's love of llamas. They fit in perfectly. While I was pasting these down, I noticed an upstairs area in Pel's base which I had missed before, and so I quickly added in some pretty standard interior. This room is just meant to be a pretty empty area that you can relax in. And finally, I created a facility under the ocean where the rockets that the hermits used to escape before the moon crashed is being held, as in this reality, the moon never grew. While I built this final thing, I just wanted to let you know that in the spirit of HermitCraft, every penny I've made from these videos so far has been donated to charity. All of the money from my transformations up to the Pearlescent Moon one was donated during the HermitCraft charity event, and the remaining money which I made off of the Mumbo transformation since, I have decided to double, considering this video has not released yet, and all of that money has been donated to Make-A-Wish. You viewing this video are the reason that money could be donated, and so thank you so much for watching. Together, we've raised $2,700. If you're looking for the world download, I'm not going to set a like goal as I normally do, as your support during this series has been so generous. Instead, I'll post the download link for free in my Discord the second that this video goes live. I've also included a HD wallpaper of the Boatem transformation where you can download it for free as well. If you enjoyed this series, please do consider leaving a like and subscribing. Also, leaving a comment helps more than you could ever imagine to boost the video, and I just love reading them all. Thank you again for watching, and for the last time from Boatem, goodbye.